I feel, and this is what made the shift for me. So I was telling you that I came into the leadership circle world because well, my friends were going, but also I didn't have a language. I
Mhm.
had this coaching language, which was a little bit ethereal, a little bit ungrounded, a little bit dreamy, and it resonated with me, but I was having trouble, translating for people who worked in organizations. And so what the leadership circle profile did is, with its framework and its naming of both the creative competencies that support us in being optimal leaders, and the reactive tendencies, which are normal human behaviors but can hold us back.
Mhm.
um, that languaging has been very, very useful for my clients. I work mostly with, when I'm doing the corporate work that I do, mostly work with organizations at a system level. So I'm working with the top 3 levels of leadership, and with a view to, of course, improving their individual leadership effectiveness, but with the top of mind being, how can we help them create a culture that is most effective for them and their employees and their stakeholders and their customers and everybody else. So this gives you a language. It gives a language, a common language that mostly, okay, I get that you've heard objections about the questions not relating to our particular industry or our particular company. Most people can relate to, the language of decisiveness, purposeful and visionary, becoming aware of systems, balance, work-life balance. I mean, there's some languaging to this that becomes a common groundwork, I guess, for the organization. And then, of course, because these pathways become so clear once you see your results, you see, I need to work on this. So let me just talk about this in a little bit more of a real way. But I guess my point is, this is about creating a common vocabulary for the organization, which then becomes a huge support to the journey that the actual framework suggests. So just to be clear about some of these pathways, because I think they're very exciting, and I actually feel hugely excited as I start to
feel
talk
the
about
excitement.
This. Yeah. So there are 3 typologies that this instrument suggests. One is called complying, the other one is called protecting, and the third one is called controlling. And these typologies, this typology lens, if I just said those 3 words, if you're listening to this and you know nothing about this instrument at all, you could probably tell me which one of those is your tendency, because we all have 1, 2, or 3 of those tendencies, and you know which one is yours. So for me, my tendency was complying. Well, what's in complying? Complying is actually grounded in a beautiful gift called the gift of heart. That's what I call it anyway, gift of heart. And I care so much about relationships, about how it is between me and other people and things being good. So when I am complying, what I can do is I can actually hold back. I can hold back my truth. I can hold back my observations, and I can sink into a bit of passivity, because I'm fearful that if I actually share what I'm really thinking, it will damage relationships, and damaging relationships to me is like the worst thing that could ever happen. So right away, I saw that that's what was going on. I was so nice and I wanted harmony so badly that I was willing to sacrifice my own truth for the sake of that. And in doing that, I actually became untrustworthy, which is really the opposite of what I ever intended. And so you actually see this in the circle. Oh, I'm really high on complying and I'm really low on achieving as a result. And so the things that I want to do, the things that I'm passionate about, I'm not going to get them done if this is my strategy. So it's just so, and there are leaders, I think most leaders can relate to that, or they relate to controlling, which is kind of the opposite of that, which is I've got to do everything myself to make this happen. I can't trust anyone else. I know no one else will do it to my standard. I got to drive, manage, micromanage, and build this monument to myself by myself. And it leaves, frankly, a trail of dead bodies in their wake. At worst, at its most toxic,
Yes.
and it's most mildly, people leave, people don't stay, people don't come to work to do nothing, or to be micromanaged. They actually come wanting to do something. So both of these are the two extremes. There's a third one called protecting, which, you know, we can talk about if you want, but the pathway and the opportunity to grow from one to the other is not one to the other, but one to something that is more optimal, is so clear. And so when everybody's working on that at these top 3 levels of leadership, or even one of those levels of leadership, now we have a common frame, and now we have a common set of pathways. Now we have a common vocabulary. Now we're changing our culture. And then the next step is to integrate all of that. Because when it's integrated and not just like a concept or a theory that people can think and talk about, then you start to feel, you know, that something is shifting in the organization, and you start to see those outer markers of results that people are always looking for. And that is, by the way, usually at least a 2-year journey. It's not a 6-month or let's do the assessment and have a debrief and we'll be all set.
Instant fix.
Right.
There's so many instants people are looking for. Well, that's a wonderful description of, and I'm going to, there's more language for me to take away with that as well. That those tendencies that we all have, that we bring to the table, to recognize the strengths in them, and to say if we overuse them, we're actually going to be less effective than we're hoping to be. So that's I was recognizing the controlling one was the one that got me. I said it was great when I was running cardiac arrest, but it's not so good in people leading. So it's okay, I have to kind of dial back that part of it. But and to shift up, you know, there's the shift to relating, and that I love that dynamism that goes across the circle and opposite, but also the pathway to shift up. If achieving is my gift, how could I sort of change my mindset a bit and move into the creative part of achieving and engage people to achieve versus deciding I have to do it all myself. So that's
right.
Yeah, that's what was really beneficial for me.
I call that growing up gifts. That's the language I use for this shift that you're talking about, is these gifts. Like complying is the gift of heart, controlling is the gift of willpower, and protecting is the gift of intellect. And so you can use these things in a way that works against you. No, I don't want to say it like that. The reactive tendencies do work against you, but they are also necessary, because that's how we learn how to use these gifts, is by using them in that way. So there's nothing bad or wrong about this. What the profile does is it kind of gives you, like you said at the beginning of this conversation, a snapshot in time. And I always say that when I'm teaching coaches to use this, it's a snapshot in time. It's not an indictment. It doesn't mean you're destined to be this way forever and you're stuck here. It's like, this is how you're using one of these 3 gifts or all of these 3 gifts right now. And there's another way to use them. So when you grow them up into what we call creative, which, you know, if you don't know what we're talking about, there's a circle. The bottom side of the circle measures things that we call reactive tendencies. The top side of the circle measures things that we call creative competencies. And you can use those 3 gifts that I talked about in a reactive or a creative way. So the work then is to actually grow them up. And that's what leadership development, at least for this context that we're speaking of, there is further leadership development to do that goes beyond what is measured in this circle, I might add. And that is a whole other conversation. But for the purposes of this profile, that's the growing up of the gifts that we're talking about.
That's great. Well, it sounds like that could be another whole conversation that we down the road as we're talking in more detail about that. Shahmeen, thank you so much. This, my mind is really working a lot, because you've given me a lot of food for thought, and, you know, also feeling affirmed that, those are the things I'm doing. And there's that whole notion of my own language for it? How do I express the gifts? And I love how you summarize that, the gift of heart, the gift of intellect, and the gift of willpower. So that's really great. Well, I really appreciate you being with me today and having, I feel like this has been almost like a great webinar for me on the Leadership Circle profile. So I can, I'll be able to amp up my game, as Bob Anderson says, in working with it. So thank you so much. And
Oh, thank you so much for asking me, Michelle.
Yeah.
It's been so much fun. I love talking about all of
Yeah.
this, and
No.
yeah, I wish you well with your journey. I want to just leave you with two thoughts,
Yeah.
and that is that
Mhm.
I believe two things are true about people, all humans, me included, everyone included, the Dalai Lama included, anyone that you might think is a finished product, I include them in this, that we are enough as we are, and we're works in progress.
Yeah.
And so there's always something more to stretch into. And I have areas that I am stretching into as well and learning so much about. That is always available to us, and we're enough as we are. So that to me is part of how I create that safe container, is by thinking about humans in that way.
Well, I see that as a quote coming up now.
I call
This
it the
is
two truths.
the two truths of Shahmeen Sadiq. That's wonderful.